The plague that should not exist. The emergency broadcast. The message arrived simultaneously on every communications channel across 17 star systems. It was marked with the red spiral symbol that meant only one thing: galactic emergency. Dr. Elena Vasquez was in her lab on Mars when the broadcast interrupted her work. She set down the petri dish she'd been examining and turned to the screen, her dark eyes reflecting the emergency symbol that pulsed in the center. "This is High Medical Director Zarn of the Galactic Health Collective," said a voice accompanied by the image of a Thoraxian, his crystalline body structure refracting light in anxious patterns. "We are issuing a Level 1 health crisis alert. A plague has emerged on the colony world of Nexus Prime. The infection spreads through all known biological systems. Mortality rate is 98% within 72 hours of exposure. All conventional treatments have failed." Elena leaned forward, her scientific mind already analyzing the information. "The plague affects every species we have tested," Zarn continued, and for the first time, Elena heard fear in an alien voice. "Thoraxians, Borlax, Centauri, even the silicon-based Kron. Nothing is immune. We are calling on all member civilizations to share any research that might help. Time is critical. 3 million souls have already been lost." The broadcast ended. Elena sat in silence for a moment, then she did something that would change everything. She smiled. The humans volunteer. 24 hours later, Elena stood in the council chamber of the Galactic Health Collective's orbital headquarters. Around her sat the greatest medical minds in known space, beings who had cured diseases that humans couldn't even pronounce, who had extended lifespans to millennia, who had mastered genetic engineering and cellular regeneration. And they were all staring at her like she was insane. "Dr. Vasquez," High Medical Director Zarn said carefully, his crystalline form dimming with what Elena had learned was confusion. "You are suggesting that Earth can help with this crisis?" "Not suggesting," Elena replied calmly. "I'm telling you we can cure it." A ripple of disbelief spread through the chamber. A Vorlax physician, her tentacles twitching with what might have been amusement, spoke up. "Doctor, no offense to your species, but human medicine is primitive. You only discovered antibiotics 200 years ago. You still use surgery that involves cutting into the body. You haven't even mastered cellular regeneration." "All true," Elena agreed. "But we have something you don't." "And what is that?" asked a Centauri doctor, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "Experience with chaos," Elena said simply. The chamber fell silent. Elena activated her datapad, projecting images into the center of the room. "You've all evolved on stable worlds. Your diseases follow predictable patterns. Your immune systems developed in environments where pathogens evolved slowly, systematically. Your medicine is elegant, precise, and based on millions of years of biological order." She changed the image to show Earth, blue and green and swirling with clouds. "Earth is a death world. Our diseases mutate rapidly. Our pathogens are aggressive, unpredictable, and merciless. Our immune systems are weapons forged in constant war. And our medicine?" She smiled. "Our medicine is built on desperation, trial and error, and the absolute refusal to accept that anything is incurable." Zarn's crystalline structure flickered. "The plague on Nexus Prime is not like your Earth diseases, Doctor. It transcends biological categories. It infects silicon and carbon-based life equally. It adapts faster than we can analyze it. Every treatment we develop is obsolete before we can administer it." "I know," Elena said. "I've reviewed your data. It's fascinating." "Fascinating?" The Vorlax physician's tentacles stiffened with what Elena recognized as anger. "Doctor, 3 million beings are dead. This is not a research opportunity." "You're right, and I apologize," Elena said quickly. "But what I mean is that this plague behaves exactly like something we've dealt with before." "Impossible," said the Centauri doctor. "Earth has never encountered anything like this." "Not naturally," Elena agreed. "But we've created it. In our laboratories, we've engineered adaptive pathogens for research purposes. We've studied viruses that mutate faster than we can sequence them. We fought bacterial infections that develop resistance to every drug we throw at them. And we've learned how to win. She pulled up another image, a microscopic view of twisted, alien proteins. This plague isn't a natural disease. It's too perfect. Too adaptable. Someone or something engineered it. And the key to beating it isn't trying to outthink it. Then what is the key? Zarn asked quietly. Overwhelm it, Elena said. Don't try to find one perfect cure. Hit it with everything at once. Multiple treatments, multiple approaches, multiple angles of attack. Make it adapt to so many threats simultaneously that it can't keep up. The Vorlax physician shook her tentacles in a gesture Elena had learned meant dismissal. That approach is barbaric. It's imprecise. It could cause more harm than the disease itself. It's also how humanity survived for millennia before we even understood what germs were, Elena countered. We learned to fight dirty because we had no choice. And now that knowledge might save your civilizations. The proposal. High Medical Director Zarn stood slowly, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns across the walls. Dr. Vasquez, what exactly are you proposing? Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. Give me a team. Let me take human doctors, human equipment, and human methods to Nexus Prime. We'll work alongside your physicians, but you have to let us do things our way. No restrictions, no protocols, no committee approvals for every decision. This plague moves fast. We need to move faster. You want complete autonomy to experiment on infected patients? The Centauri doctor sounded horrified. That violates every medical ethics code in the Galactic Health Collective. Your ethics codes were written for normal diseases, Elena said bluntly. This isn't normal. You've lost 3 million people in less than a week. How many more will die while you debate the proper procedures? The chamber erupted in argument. Voices in a dozen languages overlapped, creating a cacophony that the universal translator struggled to parse. Some supported Elena's proposal. Most opposed it. The idea that primitive humans could solve a problem that had stumped the galaxy's best minds was offensive to many of them. Finally, Zarn raised his primary manipulator, and the room fell silent. I have reviewed humanity's medical history, he said quietly. It is, as our colleague noted, brutal and imprecise. But it is also remarkably effective. Humans have survived plagues that would have exterminated most species. They have developed treatments through methods we would consider reckless. And they have a success rate that, while lower than our own, is achieved with far more primitive technology. He turned his crystalline gaze to Elena. More importantly, they have something we desperately need right now, hope. Because they have never accepted that any disease is truly incurable. Zarn's form brightened, casting sharp shadows across the chamber. Dr. Vasquez, you and your team will depart for Nexus Prime immediately. You will have the full support of the Galactic Health Collective. But understand this, if your methods fail, if they cause unnecessary suffering, humanity's reputation in the galactic medical community will be destroyed. Elena met his gaze without flinching. And if we succeed? If you succeed, Zarn said softly, you will prove that sometimes the best medicine is not the most elegant or sophisticated. Sometimes, the best medicine is simply the refusal to give up. Elena nodded. We'll need complete access to your research data, transportation for our equipment, and one more thing. What is that? I need every failed treatment you've attempted. Every approach that didn't work, every drug that showed promise before the plague adapted, every therapy you abandoned because it wasn't perfect. We're going to use all of it at once. The Vorlax physician made a sound of disgust. You'll kill the patients. They're dying anyway, Elena said quietly. But with our methods, at least they have a chance. The treatment that broke the rules. Arrival on Nexus Prime. The medical transport ship touched down on Nexus Prime's primary landing pad, And Elena Vasquez got her first look at a world in the grip of a plague that shouldn't exist. The colony had been beautiful once. She could see that in the elegant architecture, the carefully planned gardens, the wide streets designed for multiple species to coexist comfortably. Now it looked like a war zone. Emergency medical tents filled every open space. Quarantine barriers divided neighborhoods. Bodies, covered in thermal shrouds, waited for disposal. The air itself seemed heavy with despair. Elena's team consisted of 12 human doctors and 30 technicians, all volunteers who understood they might not return home. They also brought 20 cargo containers filled with equipment that made the alien medical staff stare in confusion and horror. Dr. Kiran Patel, Elena's second-in-command, stood beside her as they watched the containers being unloaded. "They think we're barbarians," he observed quietly. "They're not entirely wrong," Elena replied. "Our medicine is crude compared to theirs. But crude isn't the same as ineffective." A Thoraxian medical coordinator approached them, her crystalline structure showing stress fractures that Elena recognized as a sign of extreme fatigue. "Dr. Vasquez, I am Coordinator Scythe. High Medical Director Zarn sent word of your arrival. Your equipment is being transferred to the emergency research facility. I must warn you, the situation has deteriorated since the broadcast. We are losing patients faster than we can treat them." "How many infected?" Elena asked. "In this colony alone, 47,000 confirmed cases. Across all affected worlds, the number exceeds 12 million. Kiran let out a low whistle. Elena felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her voice steady. "Take us to the most critical cases. We need to see the plague in action. The impossible disease." The isolation ward was filled with the dying. Elena had seen epidemic wards before, during the Mars colony outbreak of 2187, during the Europa Station crisis, but this was different. Every bed held a different species, yet they all showed the same progression. First came the fever. Then the breakdown of cellular function. Then the catastrophic system failure as the plague essentially dissolved the body from the inside out. Most patients died before reaching the final stage. Elena approached a bed where a young Centauri lay motionless except for the shallow rise and fall of his thorax. His 6 eyes, normally bright with intelligence, were clouded with pain. "His name is Plex," Scythe said quietly. "He is a student. 23 years old by his species counting. He was infected 4 days ago. He has perhaps 12 hours remaining." Elena pulled out her handheld scanner, primitive compared to the Galactic Health Collective's equipment, but it gave her information she understood. She studied the readings, her mind processing the data at lightning speed. "The plague is rewriting his genetic code," she murmured. "Not destroying it. Rewriting it into something incompatible with life." "Yes," Scythe confirmed. "We believe it is attempting to convert all biological matter into a template for its own reproduction. But the process is imperfect. It kills before completion." "What treatments have you tried?" Scythe's crystalline structure dimmed. "Everything. Antiviral compounds, genetic stabilizers, cellular regeneration therapy, immune system enhancement, even complete blood replacement. The plague adapts to each treatment within hours. By the time we modify our approach, it has already rendered the modification useless." Elena looked at young Plex, barely more than a child by any species standards, dying of something that had been engineered to kill with perfect efficiency. Something cold and hard settled in her chest. "We're not going to let that happen," she said. The brutal solution. 6 hours later, Elena stood in front of a holographic display showing the chemical structure of the plague pathogen. Around her, her team worked frantically, preparing what the Galactic Health Collective staff had started calling the Chaos Protocol. "This is insane," a Vorlax physician named Theris said, watching the preparations with obvious distress. "You are preparing to administer 17 different treatments simultaneously. The interactions alone could kill the patient." "The plague will definitely kill the patient," Elena replied without looking away from her display. "This gives them a chance." "A chance?" Thera's tentacles writhed with agitation. You have not tested any of these combinations. You do not know what will happen. You're right, Elena admitted. But I know what will happen if we do nothing. And I know that this plague is designed to adapt to single-threat treatments. So we're not giving it a single threat. We're giving it 17 threats, and we're going to keep changing them every 6 hours. She turned to face the Vorlax physician. Your medicine is elegant. It's precise. It's based on understanding exactly how treatments work at the molecular level. Our medicine is based on throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. Usually, your way is better. But this isn't a usual situation. Kieran looked up from his station. Elena, we're ready for the first test subject. Plex has consented to the treatment. Elena felt her heart rate increase. Everything depended on the next few hours. If this worked, they could save millions. If it failed, she would have killed a young student who'd trusted her with his final hours. Begin the protocol, she ordered. The treatment. The Chaos Protocol was exactly what its name suggested, organized chaos. Plex received 17 different treatments in rapid succession. Antivirals from 3 different human diseases. Antibiotics that the plague shouldn't have been vulnerable to. Immune system stimulants. Genetic stabilizers. Even some traditional herbal compounds that Elena's research team had found promising in preliminary tests. Most controversial was the inclusion of controlled toxins, substances that would damage Plex's own cells, but that Elena theorized might force the plague to expend energy defending itself instead of attacking. His vital signs are destabilizing, Thera reported, her voice tight with concern. Expected, Elena said, watching the monitors. The plague is trying to adapt to multiple threats. It's working harder than it ever has before. He is dying. He was already dying. Now he's fighting back. The next 2 hours were the longest of Elena's life. Plex's condition fluctuated wildly. His fever spiked to dangerous levels, then dropped. His cellular integrity fragmented, then partially stabilized. The plague tried to adapt, shifting its structure to counter each treatment, but it couldn't adapt fast enough to counter all of them. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the readings began to stabilize. His genetic code, Scythe whispered, moving closer to the monitor. It is repairing itself? The plague is losing, Kieran said, his voice filled with wonder. It's expending so much energy trying to adapt that it can't maintain its assault on his system. Elena allowed herself a small breath of relief. Phase 2. Reduce the number of treatments but increase their intensity. Keep the plague off balance. Don't let it find a stable defense. Over the next 6 hours, they adjusted the treatment protocol 12 times. Each time the monitors suggested the plague was beginning to adapt, they changed the combination of drugs, keeping it in a constant state of defensive reaction. When Plex finally opened his 6 eyes, lucid and aware for the first time in days, Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Did it work? He asked weakly in the universal language. It worked, Elena said softly. You're going to survive. The aftermath. Within 48 hours, the Chaos Protocol had been administered to 300 patients across Nexus Prime. The survival rate was 73%, not perfect, but a miracle compared to the previous 2% survival rate. The Galactic Health Collective's physicians watched in amazement and horror as human doctors broke every rule of elegant medicine and saved lives by doing so. They administered drug combinations that should have been lethal. They used treatments that were barely tested. They made decisions based on intuition and experience rather than complete data. And it worked. High Medical Director Zarn arrived on Nexus Prime to see the results personally. He stood with Elena in the recovery ward, watching patients who should have been dead walking, talking, and healing. I do not understand, he said quietly. Your methods are imprecise. Your approach is chaotic. By every standard we have developed over millions of years, this should not work. But it does, Elena said. Yes. But why? Elena was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Because you've forgotten something that humans never had the luxury of forgetting. Medicine isn't about elegance. It's not about perfect understanding or precise treatments. It's about saving lives by any means necessary. She gestured at the recovering patients. You've spent millions of years developing medicine in relatively stable environments. Your diseases evolved slowly. You had time to study them, understand them, create perfect solutions. But humans? We evolved in chaos. Our diseases were fast, adaptive, and merciless. We didn't have time for perfect solutions. We had to find imperfect solutions that worked right now. You learned to fight dirty, Zarn observed. We learned to win, Elena corrected. There's a difference. Zarn's crystalline structure brightened with what Elena had learned was approval. Dr. Vasquez, the Galactic Health Collective wishes to formally request that Earth establish a permanent medical research facility. We believe that combining our elegant understanding with your adaptive approach could revolutionize galactic medicine. We accept, Elena said. On one condition. Which is? You stop calling our medicine primitive. It's not primitive. It's battle-tested. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need. Zarn's structure flickered in what might have been amusement. Agreed. Though I suspect many of my colleagues will continue to be horrified by your methods. Let them be horrified, Elena said, watching a young Centauri named Plex walk across the recovery ward with his family surrounding him. As long as the patients survive, I don't care what they think. 3 months later. The plague had been contained. The Chaos Protocol, refined and modified, had saved 11 million lives across 17 star systems. Human medicine had proven itself not through elegance or sophistication, but through sheer stubborn effectiveness. In her lab on Mars, Elena received a message from the Galactic Health Collective. They wanted her to lead a new initiative, creating rapid response teams that combined advanced alien technology with human adaptive methodology. They were even adopting some human medical practices into their training programs. The galaxy had learned something important. Advanced didn't always mean better. Sometimes the most effective solution was the one that refused to accept defeat, even when facing the impossible. Elena smiled and started composing her acceptance. Somewhere in the galaxy, another plague would emerge. Another impossible disease would threaten millions of lives. And when it did, humanity would be ready with their chaotic, imperfect, beautiful medicine. Because humans had learned long ago that survival didn't require elegance. It required determination, creativity, and the absolute refusal to let death have the final word.